Live from the Motor City, all the way to the Volunteer State. It's time for the Reckless Speculation Podcast, where we recklessly speculate the latest news in the world of sports. From college football to NASCAR, we've got you covered. And don't forget to stick around for the world-famous Bet Your Nuts, where we will give you your best bets to make the most money. Now sit back, grab your favorite drink of choice, and join Robbie Davis, Raj Mehta, Brandon Chain, and Tom Sloan. It's showtime.
And good evening, everyone. We are Reckless Speculation. I am Raj Mehta. This is Tom Sloan. The other two dorks don't know jack shit about baseball, so we kick them to the curb.
Get out of here.
Pretty face is at least one of them. We're going to be talking about today's trade deadline that ended at 6 p.m. Eastern. As you can see, we're going to go over the winners, the losers, surprises, who was traded, who wasn't, and what the fuck are the Mets up to. Sorry, I have bad language, but with the Mets, we're going to get into that, but you got a team that spent $800 million in the offseason, that paid $10 million in luxury taxes, which is more than, I wrote it down, roughly like the salary or the total payroll opening day rosters of like 10 teams, which is just insane.
It's more than the two of the top three teams in MLB right now with the Orioles and the Rays.
That's just amazing. And, the funny thing is about the Mets is Fangraphs had rated them the number 11 farm in all of baseball, and that was on August 1st. So that's going to go up quite a bit, but as we're going to talk about, they are still broke as a joke, and they owe a ton of money. But without further ado, Tom is from Detroit and a huge Tigers fan. I'm obviously from Southern California and a huge Dodgers fan. Tom, I'm going to start with you. And, there was talk of Detroit being a potential buyer. In the end, they sold. And I'm going to start with Michael Lorenzen. What did you think about the deal? Did they get enough?
Well, Lorenzen was kind of low risk for the Tigers when they brought him in. From everything I've understood, they brought him in here with the understanding that they were going to kind of build him up, make him profitable, make him marketable. And after the trade was done, they interviewed Lorenzen, and he basically celebrated Scott Harris, saying, you held your end of the bargain. You kept your promise, and he came to the Tigers with not a lot of recognition. He gets the representation of the Tigers as their lone all-star. And since the all-star break, he's been a really solid pitcher. So they kind of put him on the map again and made him, valuable trade commodity for some of these teams that are making runs like the Phillies. So he's going to help their rotation. And from what they said today, Dombrowski said today, they're going to go with a 6-man rotation. So going to have fresh arms going into a wild card run, because there's not a chance in Hades that they're going to make up ground in the East.
No, not at all. And I'll admit, getting that prospect, Kylie McDaniel had highly rated How You Lee.
Yeah. The number 5 in the Phillies organization.
Just super versatile, a really good get. But I have to admit, I was surprised he went to a team with Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, Taijuan Walker, Ranger Suarez, and Christopher, what's his name? Sende. I can't remember his last name.
Sendejo. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked the Dodgers didn't make a run at him. He's a Southern California kid, and he kind of would have fit right into that rotation. And you wonder if the Dodgers aren't kicking themselves a little bit after, we'll get into it shortly, the Erod situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a conspiracy per se, but Andrew Friedman sort of, set a very high bar for himself, and he's got proteges like Alex Anthopoulos, like others with the Giants before Farhan Zaidi. I mean, it goes down the list, and some of these guys are just beating him to the punch, and they are better than him. But yeah, moving on, the Tigers did have 2 starting pitchers, really, that were going to command a ton, especially after Verlander was dealt, and we'll get into that. Eduardo Rodriguez, supposedly a deal was done, and he had signed off on it, correct? And then what the hell happened?
Well, from what I understand, rumors are it's a marital thing. So last year, Erod took an absence from the team, several month absence from the team, and he disregarded phone calls, he disregarded text messages, and the reasoning behind his leave of absence was a marital situation. So there were rumors today that this was Erod getting back at the Tigers because they withheld pay from him last year when he disappeared, so to speak, which the team had every right to do that. I think every team would do that. So, but as more news got out and as the news came out that he did sign off on it, but then at the 11th hour he decided, I'm not going there. And we'll remind everyone, he had 10 teams on his no trade, and the Dodgers were one of them, which is crazy to me. So all indications that I'm hearing out of Detroit is it's a potential situation where the wife was like, I don't want to go to LA. And like we spoke earlier, he's got family on the East Coast. I don't like situations when you put, family in the scenario. It's like you want to do things for the betterment of your career. And I think him going to the Dodgers would have been a better situation for him currently.
Yeah, I mean, what percentage of ball players would you say are married? And in our years, extensive years for me at least, I have never heard of this excuse. I know he's got an opt-out next year and a no trade, a favorable contract, but I mean, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Hasn't the city yet ever heard that? I know he's got family on the East Coast.
Yeah.
I got a guy that, got a little big for his britches, as they say here in the South. 13-5 or something when they won the World Series with the Red Sox. You saw him, like one of my lasting images I was at that game for, when he gave up a home run to Yasiel Puig and just fired his glove on the ground in like the 4th inning. And we're just like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? They were exponentially a better team. Ironically got bets from that the next year, 19-6. Then he goes to Detroit. He just seems like a odd cat, dude, like a weird dude. But yeah, that I was speechless. I have to admit, I took it a little personally. Not that it's me, but I had never heard that, man. And it's for half a season. Like, give me a break.
It sounds to me like he made comments that he likes being here, and possibly he's going to pick up his player option for next year. And I think Harris, they interviewed Scott Harris today before the game that they lost, go figure, against the Pirates. And he said that worst case scenario, they've got a top left-handed starter, so it's not all that bad. So the risk is, will he resign? Scott Harris has taken a lot of heat on Twitter, because I'm not calling it X, I'm calling it Twitter, and the fans are not happy with him. But I just don't think he had any other situation to go. And like he said, there's 10 teams. It's a small market that you have to deal with, and you're talking about a third of the teams in the league, and out of those 2/3, how many of them are in the market to actually make moves? And as you saw, there weren't many. There was only a handful that actually made deals that bettered them for the rest of this season. So his hands were tied. I think Erod, ultimately kind of screwed him, and now he's left holding the bag, and Scott Harris looks like the bad guy in the situation.
You say as your headline or tagline, whatever the avatar, disgruntled Tiger fan. Can you expand on that? Is that just hopes and dreams being dashed again, or what?
Well, I mean, look no further than the two high-profile pitchers that got moved in the last 48 hours with Scherzer and Verlander. They were on this roster with David Price and Rick Porcello. And
you guys
in 2013.
Oh, man. You had the best rotation ever.
And they just couldn't get it done. Ironically enough, the Orioles were the team that just upended them in the playoffs. So, and since then, this team has just gone downhill. I mean, there's been a lot of hype. Last year, there was a lot of hype, and they just didn't do anything. I believe they're headed in the right situation, but losing has become commonplace here in Detroit, and it just sucks. We went down to the ball game a couple weeks ago, and that was an embarrassment. I told you don't bet on Detroit because we were going, but it's just losing sucks no matter what you look at it. And for the last 10 years, that's all the Tigers have done. But you know what? I bleed orange and blue, so I'll run with them. So and I have faith in Scott Harris. I think he's got a great pedigree coming from San Francisco and Tampa, and so I think he's the right guy for this situation.
I agree. You guys have taken. I mean, it's been a long time since. Thank God for the Wolverines, right? Because I mean, Detroit, for those that don't know, has such a loyal, passionate fan base. And when you look at the Wings over the last 10 years, the Tigers, it's just a lot of what ifs. The Lions
are our only hope.
Yeah. You always say, grab your drink of choice. And if I was from Detroit, I would definitely take your advice on that.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly, I'm going to get into the Dodgers off that. Every year we have this unrealistic hope, whether it be starting with Manny Ramirez, getting us to the playoffs back then. Don't care. It was before he got called a cheater. Machado, Scherzer, you name it. Usually when we needed it, we got it. The last few years, that has not been the case. Last year, we didn't need anyone. We just got cold. This year, LA, all 5 starters in the rotation have been injured at one point or another. Dustin May is done. Syndergaard was pretty much useless. He goes out for the Indians in what I thought was a great deal for LA and gives up 2 hits and 1 run. They lost. But, they got Ahmed Rosario in return, who is a versatile fielder. LA preaches versatility. Miguel Rojas is their shortstop, very weak hitter. Rosario hits .306 against lefties. He can also play different positions and spell JD Martinez at DH, who is hurt right now, his hamstring. I guess that's what happens when you're 36. But
there's another player that was on the 13 roster for the Tigers.
Oh, yeah. I think he started out slow his first year, and then he just tore it up. And, of course, per usual, the MO, he got good and left. But, yeah, they added Ryan Yarbrough for very little. The thing about the Dodgers is they needed innings, and they got Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly, who's a gangster and a L.A. hero. They got back Kike Hernandez for very little. Seems like they're trying to relive 2020, but in the end, they kept their 4 main starting pitchers that are rookies that were called up way too early in Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan, Ryan Pepio, who's hurt right now, and Gavin Stone. So LA didn't give up a ton, and they got reinforcements. Do we wish we got more and more help? Absolutely. The Dodgers have a top 5, top 7 farm system. It's there. The flip side of all of this is, when are you going to use it? You've got aging superstars. But, teams were asking the world. I know they were really high on Dylan Cease, but the White Sox were asking for too much. I'm surprised the Pirates didn't deal Mitch Keller or David Bednar. They were asking for a ton. So,
that's their foundation. That's Pittsburgh's foundation. And they're a lot like Cincinnati. They're right there. I think Cincinnati's slightly higher than them currently, but Those are two guys that they're going to build on, and I didn't see them moving either one of those two.
I agree, but I mean they're getting older as well, and I mean, how long can they toil in sub-mediocrity? It's, look at the Mets. They at least got a ton of prospect for those guys. And I'm going to go to the Mets. Out were Verlander, Scherzer, Tommy Pham, Mark Canha, David Robertson, just an amazing closer. I may be missing someone. Would you call the Mets a winner or a loser?
Well, I'm going to call them a loser because $380 million payroll for this season. And you did absolutely nothing, to the point of you not only got rid of your two Hall of Fame pitchers, not Mets Hall of Fames, but irregardless, two Hall of Fame pitchers, and you're paying the vast majority of their salary. And I think there's where the issue comes into play as losers. They're paying Verlander $35 million. And if he picks up the option, now the option comes with a caveat. It has to be, he has to reach so many innings pitched, and he has to go through a medical evaluation in order to get that option for 25. So, but the Mets are going to pay half of that. So, where did they gain? Yeah, they picked up prospects, but as far as the payroll goes, and then here's Scherzer. Here's another one. He's the Mets are going to cover over $35 million of his contract. That's just, you got Ronald Acuna's brother, who looks like he's a potential MLB player, but I mean, here we go again. You're paying these guys to play on another team in a sense. So they made out, their farm system made out, yes. But as a whole, when you're paying another team for the players that you signed, I just don't see where that's good practice. And I just think the Mets just really dropped the ball when it came to this. I mean, and it started when they threw all that money at Verlander, in the offseason. So
2 40-year-old pitchers. And
so yes, they did well in return, but it cost them in the long run. And Scherzer came out today and said he pulled Cohen aside and said, "Listen, what's your plans? What's your outlook?" And he told him flat out, 25, 26. So you'd be wise to waive the no trade, and he did. So that's weird to me. You're basically telling the guy, you know what, you're better off to leave, and we're gonna pay you. So I think Scherzer did the right thing in that regard.
And I know that's down the list after winners and losers, but I just don't get it. I don't know what to call them. You don't spend $806 million on a team that won 101 games last year, and then pivot and say, "Oh yeah, we're planning for 25, 26." Shut the fuck up, man.
And then again, you look at that situation. Why didn't they move the Panda? Why didn't they move him? I was listening to MLB radio this afternoon, CJ Nitkowski, and he was like, "Well, what's the point? Is he going to be the next superstar off the board?" And they didn't move him. So I just don't know what's going on in New York, not just with the Mets.
I don't think the Mets know what's going on with the Mets at this point.
No way.
But, I guess we'll see. They'll probably turn around and package half the guys they got this year at the deadline next year and try to make a run and pay whoever. But whatever. Without further ado, I'll get back to the schedule that you so gracefully laid out for us. What are give me your top 3 winners from today?
The winners here, I think it's Houston. I think Houston did a great job. They get Verlander back. He won a title for them in Garbage Can Gate. They didn't really have to give up. They gave up prospects, but they got money in return. So essentially, it's costing Houston $3 million out of pocket for Justin Verlander. So he's immediately going to go right into the top two of that rotation, and he's going to make them probably the favorites coming out of the West.
I agree. They needed him, after losing Lance McCullers Jr. and Luis Garcia for the year.
Mm-hmm.
They needed him, and instead of re-signing him for $80 million, the Mets paid him for them.
So I like what the Rangers did. They're a team they're surging. They spent a lot of money last year and didn't have the stats to show it.
Mm-hmm.
This year everything seems to be rolling for them. Go get a number one. Go get a guy that could put you over that hump. And like I just said, I think Houston wins the West. The Rangers are going to come out in the wild card. So I like what they did there. And here's one kind of outside the box. I like what the Cubs did in two regards. I think they brought Candelario back.
Good move there.
He's a solid baseball player.
Right? Did they trade him?
Yep. Former Cub got traded to Detroit. Went to Washington this past offseason. Solid baseball player. He's a good third baseman. He's going to hit well in Chicago. And here's another reason why I think Chicago did well. They kept Cody Bellinger. They kept Marcus Stroman. Although Stroman's been a little down, I think he's kind of the heart and soul of that team. So it was worth keeping. And Bellinger, it never made any sense to me why they were kind of dangling him towards other teams, because he's one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now. So, and they're right in the thick of things. So it didn't make sense to me to move him, and they didn't. So I think for that reason, they're in the top three of my winners.
It's another case where a team started winning games near the deadline, and they went from full sell mode to obviously kind of buy. The thing with Bellinger is he's on a 1-year, $17.5 million deal. And at this rate, he's going to get paid probably by the Yankees or someone. So he may be gone. I think he will be. But, Candelario is a guy who is a hell of a player, and people don't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
He is 35th in baseball in OPS. That tells us, the guy gets on base. That's OBP, obviously, but just a smart hitter. 16 home runs. He does well with runners in scoring position. I agree. And they kind of had a hole at third base. I think they did really well there. Were those, you said those are your three winners?
Those are my top three.
In terms of mine, do you have a fourth? Knock it out. We're moving pretty quickly.
How
about Toronto?
Hell of a
move losing.
They got DeYoung today. Although they did testing on Bichette, they said there's no structural damage. So,
really?
So that turns out to be a depth move for them. So they'll get Bichette. They'll probably hold Bichette back for a little while just to make sure he's healthy. But when he comes back, they're going to be prepped for a run. So they could have done more. Well, they did. Did they get another pitcher too? Offhand, I can't remember if they did or not, but
I can't remember either.
No, I don't think they did. They didn't do much, but
they seem to have done more than their count. And as a Dodger fan, we're in the dog days right now. We just got our ass handed to us at home by Cincinnati. Toronto took 2 out of 3, but I was really impressed with that Toronto team. That's a hell of a team, and I think when they needed to get a deal done, they did, and that says a lot. And compared to, some would say the Orioles didn't do enough, the Yankees and Red Sox didn't do much. You said the Yankees got the last deal of the deadline, was that a desperation deal? What was it?
They were the last team to make a deal. Maybe it was desperation. I think in their arrogant minds, they think they probably can make. You look at it, they're only 3.5 games out of a wild card, And they've done this without Judge, and Cole is hurt, and Severino has been hurt. He came back and got rocked. Rondon missed most of the year. He came back, and he's been terrible. But going back to Baltimore, I don't think they were losers in this situation. A, they got a great pitcher in Flaherty. And B, their farm system is fantastic. They've got a staple of young talent, and they didn't lose any of it. So, spearheaded by Matt Holliday's kid, I think he's in AA or AAA right now, and all indications are he's going to be a stud when he gets up to MLB. So they didn't lose that upper tier talent to go along with the talent they already have on this team, the young talent. So I'm okay with them standing pat because they've proven that they're built right now to win that division. And there isn't a better team right now in baseball, I don't think, than Baltimore. They're shocking everybody at this point.
They're ahead of schedule. And I saw a stat, we like I'm on the team, but the Dodgers went into Baltimore and took the first two. There was a stat that Baltimore has not been swept in. Baltimore won the third game, 70 consecutive series. Now, I don't believe they've been swept since then. And of course, that started with the call up of Adley Rutschman. And I saw Rutschman hitting leadoff the other day. And I was just like, I'm going to swear, when the fuck have I heard a catcher hitting leadoff? I mean, like, what? And they're, many consider them, like you said, 2 years away from really taking over. But geez, these guys they are going to take over. And when LA played them, Cedric Mullins was hurt. They're very reminiscent of Cincinnati, but better. Very aggressive. They challenge hitters. On the base pass, they're nightmares. Very versatile. They just sent down who I don't think he was an all-star or not, the struggling Tyler Wells. And you're right. They got Flaherty. Now, Flaherty was a guy who got Cy Young votes a few years ago. This year, he's been struggling. I saw a stat that of all the pitchers that have pitched 80 innings, he is last in baseball in allowing a 346 batting average with balls in play. That's not great. That could also mean,
who's he playing? Who's he playing for?
Who's he playing for?
Which you go back to.
But yeah, exactly. And
you go back to Lorenzen. Lorenzen, he's 4-6, with an ERA a shade over 3. But he's playing for the Tigers. 13 games under 500. Is his situation going to change when he goes to Philly? Just like Flaherty, his situation's going to change playing with. And I'll go back to. I believe it was 2017 when the Tigers dealt Verlander. Verlander was not good here. His last 2 years in Detroit, he was not good. And I think it was basically because the Tigers weren't good. He kind of played to the talent. And once he went to Houston, it took off. I mean, there's some players that just, they don't play. They get around a team, that culture, and it changes. So will that happen with Lorenzen? Probably. Will that happen with Flaherty? I believe it probably will.
I was surprised. Well, with Verlander, I called it PEDs, like Bumgardner, old red ass, but that's just me being bitter. I was surprised when we played Baltimore. That's a great sports town generally. There was nobody at that game. And I'm like, dude, I know that marketability is an issue. They don't have, quote, names, but I would be all over the purist, which that town is. Was half the stadium was empty and half were Dodger fans.
Yeah.
I was shocked by that. And I think you're right. When you get traded to a big team that's in a race, it tends to bring the best out of you. But I also think crowd matters. And I was really surprised by that at Baltimore. Now, they do have Mr. Splash, which is pretty cool. But the dude with like a fire hose, when they hit a home run, he like sprays the crowd.
And they do the sprinkler there. They get a double or something. They're all doing that. So
exactly. And
I love their energy.
That place is dirty as hell. So I'm just kidding. No, I just wanted to get your take on that. For me, I knew you'd get the good ones, but Pittsburgh was a team to me. They signed Andrew McCutchen, G-Man Choi, Dick Mountain, or Rich Hill in LA, as we affectionately call him. We love him. For him to go to San Diego, just
19th team. Oh wait, no, his 13th team in 19 years.
Team.
And I call him the grunter.
I love the guy. I met him. I told you I got lucky enough to be invited to a golf tournament, even though I don't golf. Just the nicest guy in the world, and a Dodger legend, just like Joe Kelly. There's just something about him, maybe being 70 in the underdog role, but for him to go to San Diego sucked. But point being is also, Carlos Santana, they were all 1-year deals on the cheap, and they flipped 3 of them for prospects, including San Diego's Jackson Wolf. I thought that was brilliant. I mean, why not sign 1-year guys?
Which he just pitched here in Detroit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was, pretty dominating, especially coming in after a long rain delay. He came back in and, he looked good. He's a crafty lefty. So yeah, that's a nice deal for Pittsburgh.
Very crafty, and sometimes he's Kylie McDaniel and other fan graphs, and just because he doesn't hit 99 and have just a 12-6 on his curve doesn't mean. That was a guy that and I saw that game. I told you that I thought he had great command. It was just called up in Double-A, I believe. There's nobody left in the Padres system, so why they needed another guy that doesn't really get on base and strikes out a lot, but hit home runs. It just puzzled me. Another team that surprised me was the Angels. I personally believe should have traded Ohtani. I bring up Herschel Walker all the time. The day they could have gotten the world for him. They've had him and Trout on the same team. They've done nothing.
Do you think that they did a little advanced feeling out, so to speak, towards other teams to get a kind of feel of what other teams potentially were offering, and maybe it wasn't to their liking, so they decided to pull the plug on it?
I do. I also think there's a PR move there. Most Angel fans hate Arte Moreno, their owner. Just, again, toiled in mediocrity. And I think he got down to a point where the team that wanted Shohei the most was the Dodgers. He would never trade them to the Dodgers, who's actually from LA versus Orange County and Anaheim. And it just got to a point where they weren't giving him enough, and he couldn't rationalize trading the best player that many have called in the history of baseball, and really getting 2 players in him. But that same day, they went out and got Giolito, who's from LA, a rental, free agent to be. They also got the former Angel CJ Cron, who's been mashing in Colorado, and also Randall Grichuk, who's another
he's a serviceable utility guy.
Yeah, guy can play all 3 positions in the outfield. So, and part of me thought that they knew that they knew Houston and Texas were going to do something. And I firmly believe the Angels just already wants to just get in the playoffs. He knows they're not going to do anything, but it's time for them to do something. And Angel fans are pretty sick of it. Another team, you already mentioned the Rangers. How about Arizona? Yeah. Andrew Chafin was a pretty crappy closer and late inning reliever.
He played here last year.
Yeah, that fat old mullet wearing. He belonged in Arizona with that hairdo and the look, but they ditched him, and somehow, and this also goes with my losers, Seattle, who is 55-51, 5 games out in the West, traded their closer, and Paul Sewell. It was just a hell of a pitcher. Just a great player. Every statistic jumps off the page, and they almost
25 saves at the All-Star break. It was my biggest All-Star snub of the season. I use your number 1 closer and lights out, and he doesn't get an All-Star pick, but yeah.
Lights out. I think like 4 straight years of sub-3 ERAs. Just an amazing whip. I thought it was him or someone else that like a .77 whip a couple of years ago, and I was just like, what the hell? Why would they trade him? I have no idea. I'm not sure if he was the one under contract through next year. Somebody was, and I was just like, what the fuck is that team thinking? But Seattle's ahead of the Angels. Actually, they're tied. And they gave him to Arizona, who also got Tommy Pham. And the Diamondbacks, have had struggled hitting left-handed pitching, and Tommy Pham can do that. Another guy who's 35 years old. He brings toughness. He's an MMA guy. He's kicked a lot of people's asses. 11
experience in the playoffs,
in the clubhouse. And again, like I said, they're very aggressive on the base paths. Another 11 stolen bases. So really, Arizona was a huge winner for me. And the Braves, they got Pierce Johnson and Brad Hand, who's a hell of a reliever. And the rich get richer there. And I guess it's kind of frustrating in that like some of these teams really filled holes. Like again, Toronto is the epitome of that. Whereas I know as a Dodger fan, we needed certain things that I don't believe we got aside from Lance Lynn, who, he could have a double cheeseburger tomorrow and have a heart attack. I hope he doesn't, but still, there was just an amazing ability of some teams to close deals. Now moving on to teams that couldn't close deals or didn't trade people. Who were your biggest losers of the deadline?
I'm going to stay home. My Tigers. Clearly, they're 6.5. Now they're 7.5 out from the Central. The coffin isn't closed, but it's only one nail away. But I think there was opportunities. Kerry Carpenter, a free swinging, power hitting left-hander. There was teams drawing interest. I think they kind of dropped the ball on him. They've got a plethora of talent down in Toledo in the outfield, so he was expendable. So I'm surprised they didn't move him. Obviously, Erod not going. That was not a good look. So now the thing is he's going to pick up his option. It's 50-50. So who knows? But another loser to me, the Yankees. They make one move. They are not going anywhere. They're in the basement in the East. They're 10 games out of first place and falling. There's no reason why they wouldn't have sold some of those pitchers that are on last years of their contract. But like I said earlier, there's an arrogance level to the Yankees. They feel like they're always in contention, and they're finding out that that division's not for the big names per se anymore, because look who's at the lead, the top two.
It's a new baseball world.
Absolutely. And then here's a team that you would have thought they would have made some noise. Being they only got a game or two lead in the division. The Minnesota Twins.
Agreed.
They did absolutely nothing. They need pitching. They could stand to get another decent hitter. It's going to be back and forth between them and the Guardians, who in my estimation, if I had a fourth team to go for as far as losing is concerned, it's the Guardians, because you traded your number one pitcher, your number one starter. He goes to Tampa. You're probably the top two or three closers in the game. Clase was a trade chip. They were going to move him, and I could not understand that. So here's a team that's a game and a half out of first place, and they're a good second half team. Look at what happened last year. They're doing the same thing. They're following the same MO, and they were sellers. And I for the life of me, I can't figure out. So again, like you said earlier, Seattle kind of boggles me. A team that's kind of right there, and they're sellers. It's hard to put yourself into some of these GMs' mindset, because Are they thinking about winning now, or are they looking a couple years down the road? And if they're looking down the road, look, we'll come back to this episode. Look, 2 years, we'll see where the Mets are in 2 years for them looking down the road. I just don't think it's a good way to practice.
I agree. And along the same line, first place team is the Cincinnati Reds, and they have a 1-game lead on Milwaukee, and they have a lot of hitting talent in that system. And if memory serves, all they did is they went out and got Sam Moll, a reliever from Oakland.
That's it.
There's a lot of holes on that team. They're hot right now, but there's 60 games left in the season, and they better flip. They can't keep this up.
Do you think their mindset was a lot like Baltimore? They've got a really nice farm system, and they don't want to mess that up because they are a little bit ahead of themselves?
It seems like it, but their system's definitely not as good as Baltimore's. But at the same token, they have a sensational player who some would argue, I watched him in Double-A. Right now he looks like a Hall of Famer. Is he that guy? No, he's very raw. And I don't see a lot of these guys. The kid from UCLA, Matt McCann, I can't think of his last name. TJ Friedel. I think these are guys that are outperforming who they are. And I would have gone for it. They have a lot of assets that could have flipped into some veteran leadership and some other guys in that clubhouse that will, help them down the stretch, because Milwaukee is an experienced team. I don't think anyone from the Central really scares people. Although, like I said, when we played the Reds last series, they were just so aggressive. They were challenging every hitter.
They play like they belong. They play unscared.
Absolutely. But again, I was telling my buddy, people know I went to graduate school in Cincinnati, and this is not a team that can sustain that, in my opinion. And you're not going to stay hot. And there's an intangible sense of hotness that I firmly believe in. LA won 111 games last year, but they were cold down the stretch. And in baseball, so many times it's who gets hot at the right time. And this is not a team that can sustain that.
2006, Detroit Tigers.
Yeah.
They're the 2023 Cincinnati Reds. They're the 2023 Baltimore Orioles. The whole regular season, probably 85% of the season, they were playing out of their mind. Nobody thought they could sustain it. They had a nice lead in the Central. They lose it. They get in the playoffs through a wild card. They steamroll through the playoffs. They get to the World Series against St. Louis. Those lights were really bright. So you wonder if this is a situation where can they sustain it? And if they do, what's going to happen when they get to these games that matter? Because in 2006, Detroit made fundamental errors that cost them the series that I could only look at as A, the inexperience, and B, these guys weren't used to playing that many games that long into the season. So you hope that this isn't the case with those two teams, but history serves, and it usually repeats itself.
Experience matters, and I firmly believe you have to pay your dues. The Dodgers beat the Braves twice in the playoffs until the Braves took over, and they were middling at the deadline, and they went out and got Soler and Rosario, who went out and just was unconscious. A few other dudes, Duvall, and they were like 500. And at the deadline, they got role players, and they won the World Series. And half that team had been there before, and that matters. And I remember that Tigers team. I think Miguel Cabrera, who's now 84, was probably like 50 back then. But
ironically enough, he was not part of that team.
I thought he had just started around then. What is 17 years ago? Like, wasn't he on that team? He's a 20-year veteran or something. Finally, a lot of people will call the Dodgers losers in the sense that, the Dodgers had a farm. They had a deal for a guy whose wife called the shots. I don't know again, I don't even know what to think of that. To get Yarbrough at the last second, a left-handed pitcher who's a guy that can get innings because that's what LA needs. Urias is fat. Gonsolin has lost it mentally. We lost May for the year. You know, people forget that Walker Buehler's been out. Hopefully he comes back in September.
I was watching High Heat today on MLB Network, and they interviewed Joe Kelly. That dude, he's legend.
Love
but
him.
he said that Buehler's planning on coming back in September. It'll be slightly over a year removed from Tommy John. So hopefully he wears a little bit looser pant. Maybe that's part of his problem.
Oh yeah. Well, his wife is pregnant, Mackenzie. Super nice girl. Yeah, I'm flexing. I know her. Just met her at the golf tournament. But
where's the siren when I need it? Woo.
If the wife, the reason why I brought up not the flex, but his nut huggers, I thought would mean that he'd never have a kid. So yeah, she is pregnant, but those things were tight as fuck. Yeah, you know, we'll see about Buehler. Joe Kelly, great quick story. The Dodgers had some kind of charity event where they had a mariachi band. I can't remember. And Joe Kelly loved what the dudes were wearing so much. That you've seen this, and he told the dude, like, hey, you know, can I get that jacket off you? And the guy was like, well, I'm coming tonight. And Joe's like, I'll switch your signed jersey for you. Sure enough, Joe goes in the bullpen end of the game, throws his signed jersey up. Dude throws the mariachi jacket down, and Joe wears that to the White House to meet President Biden, that mariachi jacket. He can do no wrong in our eyes. We love him. Standing ovation the other night when he came in. And just a guy that just doesn't give a shit, and we love that about him.
Breaking news, Raj. Breaking news.
Oh no,
Framber Valdez, no hit the Guardians today. A shutout, fewer than 100 pitches.
Wow, and that was a guy who was struggling, correct?
Let's see here.
Like up until
it just popped up. It just popped up on my notifications.
Wow. When did his hair get wrong? I'm pretty sure that he had started struggling. You know, he started out on fire. He's 8-7 now. You know, fairly high whip. Yeah, he had given up 6 against Texas, 4 earned against Oakland, 5 against the Angels. Yeah, that's a lot of runs, especially against Oakland. But he goes out and hits a
2-0. Guardians team that's on the downslope, but yeah, less than 100 pitches. That is unbelievable.
That's a quick ass game. Does it count though if it's against the Guardians? I feel like there should be.
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not.
It is Houston, so there should be an asterisk by everything those cheaters do.
But if we can rewind back about I don't know, a month, when I predicted that Houston would play your Dodgers in the World Series. And that prediction after today seems like might need to put a little money down on a bet your nuts.
We got to get healthy, but Toronto was a team, like I said, that really impressed me. Another quick update. The Cubs are beating the Reds 16-5.
Wow.
Heimer Candelario is playing first. He is 4 for 5 tonight.
Wow.
In his Cubs debut. Bellinger, 3 for 5, of course, with a home run. Dansby Swanson with 2 home runs. So, yeah, they are looks like the Cubs have hit 1, 2, 3, 6 home runs so far. And they are hammering the Cincinnati Reds, who maybe are they left in Lively for 4 innings, and he gave up 13 hits and 13 runs.
Wow. Now, so this Candelario deal, it reminds me a lot of what the Tigers did last year when they moved Isaac Paredes to the Rays for Austin Meadows. Paredes has over 40 home runs with the Rays since the trade.
Yeah.
Austin Meadows has played 40 games for the Tigers. He's battling some mental health issues. Last year he had vertigo problems, missed all but a handful of games. This year, he hasn't played. I think he came up and played maybe the first week or two, and then left the team for mental issues, which, we hate to see, and we hope nothing but the best for him. But there's a situation where the Tigers got fleeced in that regard.
You wonder about the physical and other things where they just sold a bad bill of goods. And I say that in lightheartedly. Mental health is a massive, a ridiculously important thing, and it's paramount. But vertigo, among other things, that it just arrived. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I really didn't.
And Austin Meadows, I mean, he was coming into a really good situation.
Yeah.
A lot of hype last year. And not to mention his younger brother, Parker, he is currently in the Tigers organization, moving his way up the ranks, currently in Toledo in their AAA team, and their third best hitter on that team. So you would have thought that maybe that was a situation where Austin was coming in and would kind of he already had a really solid career in Tampa, and it just hasn't panned out. And he's still, I believe, under contract for another year or two. So we'll see if he actually plays again. I never mind him playing in Detroit. Will he ever play again? Period is to be determined. But I think that's a situation that a lot of GMs look at. Like, on paper, he's a hell of a ball player.
Yeah.
But there's some things going on in their heads, and maybe they don't disclose. And there was a lot of grumblings around here that Tampa kind of knew there was a situation, but conveniently left it out. So maybe that's why teams are a little bit more hesitant to make deals when things like that happen.
I agree entirely. It's just, sometimes that type of stuff, it just seems to happen a lot to the Tigers.
Yeah, it does.
I can only help
hence my banner, disgruntled Tigers fan.
It's like the curse lives. Finally, let's get into, before we get into final words on the deadline, surprises. What surprised you the most about today? Guys that were dealt, guys that weren't dealt. What do you think?
I think the surprise came last week when the Angels pulled Ohtani off the board. This was shaping up to be one of the hottest trade deadlines in recent memory, and when he was pulled off the table, that kind of, all right, now what else do we have? And so, but the biggest surprise to me, I go back to the Mets, and I'd like to think there's more to the story why they paid so much of their contracts, but if that isn't the case and the Mets are just sending Houston and Texas the majority of the money for those contracts, then Steve Cohen probably needs to be let go of his general manager's duty and never be allowed to run a team again, because that's failure on a whole different level. So the biggest surprise to me is really is the Mets kind of miscalculation coming into this season and as the trade deadline came by.
Yeah, they had some of the highest odds to win the World Series, again, coming off of 101 wins. They started out 14-7, and then the shit hit the fan. They lost Diaz after, was it during the World Baseball Classic or the spring? I can't remember.
It was like the second game. It was a knee or an ankle or something, and he hasn't come back. So
yeah, it seems like they were cursed from that point. But I've never seen a team spend that money, let alone a 101 win team, and just end up trading. And they got good players, but trading away dudes and paying their salaries. It's actually pretty humorous. But for me, in terms of surprises, it's a lot about the guys that weren't traded. I'm going to go against you in the Bellinger deal. I'm not sure about Marcus Stroman, just because they're on one-year deals, and there's no guarantee these guys, Ohtani, that are good, they're going to re-sign. Dylan Cease is under contract, I believe, through 2025, but the White Sox are in full rebuild mode. They traded pretty much everyone else, and they were asking for way too much for a guy who has great stuff, but who has struggled this year mightily at times. And I just think some teams have to be realistic. And I really wanted to see him get dealt. Finally, again, the Angels surprised the hell out of me. Like I said, pulling back Ohtani the same day, getting Giolito, who's from LA, who's a rental. Thought he was going to the Dodgers. Then again, getting Cron and Grichuk. And, finally, I loved seeing – well, I'm going to go into my final words before I go to you, and you can close the show. Bullpen is everything in the playoffs. And, we talked about Toronto with DeJong. I forgot to mention that you got probably the top reliever in Jordan Hicks from St. Louis. Just a lights-out guy, makes another team even better. Arizona, again, getting Paul Sewald, I can never pronounce his last name, but just a really great pitcher why Seattle traded. I have no idea. Like I said,
very wonky delivery too. Very wonky delivery.
Very much like Tyler Anderson, formerly of the Dodgers, now of the Angels, who changes, arm angles, leg kicks can be pronounced. It can kind of go down and then pull it up. Just weird shit, and that's what a lot of pitchers do. Finally, Houston, they also got Kendall Graveman. It was a hell of a reliever. And, when they were good with Ryan Presley and other guys in that bullpen, that really made the difference later in games. And you've got a 40-year-old Verlander, so you need guys you can rely on. And, those teams getting those three key relievers was really impressive. It was on top of all the starters and whatnot. For these front runners, like Toronto, like I said, to get Jordan Hicks is just outstanding. And that's, in my opinion, my favorite team out of the AL. And from there, I guess we'll see. How about yourself? Closing thoughts on the 2023 Major League Baseball trade deadline?
Well, I think really the one thing I'm looking forward to is this National League wild card standings. You've got the top 6 teams currently right now are within 4 games of each other. The top 5 teams are within a game of each other. And you look at Arizona, who made moves today. You look at Milwaukee, who made moves today. You look at the Phillies, who made moves today. They're all in the mix. Miami, they're a game.
And Berger, they give up a lot, but still.
Well, this guy, 26 home runs this year. It's feast or famine with him. He's a monster. He will hit some bombs in Miami with that roof closed. So that is a good pickup. Robertson, the closer, they made some moves. This is going to be exciting to watch. The teams that are right in the thick of things made moves. Now, are they moves that are going to put them over the edge, or they moves that just aren't going to pan out? But you look at the NL Central, which is exciting. You have the Reds currently up a game over the Brewers and up 5 games of the Cubs, who, up until the past couple of weeks, they've been very hot. So this is the excitement. This is when baseball starts to get good. I know football season is among us, and we are the 2 of us from the Reckless Speculation crew are the baseball elitists, we'll say. So this is exciting for me on top of football, but I love this National League wild card race it's going to be so good to watch. And it's just going to continue the trend that baseball is on upwards. First time in many years, baseball is actually being talked about in a positive light, between attendance, between TV ratings. It's just, it's good to be a baseball fan right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm just going to sign off, but I was going to stop talking, but we all know that's hard. But you're absolutely right. 7 teams are in the wild card hunt. The Mets have just taken themselves out. But the Padres are 3 games under 500. Padres, Cubs, Marlins, Diamondbacks, Brewers, Phillies. Pretty much all of them made moves to get better. The Giants right now are leading it. That's a team that didn't do much at all. And that was surprising. But at the same token, they got A.J. Pollock and a reliever, Matthias, he's an infielder. The division leaders, the Reds, didn't do enough to separate themselves. The Dodgers, the same. And the Braves don't have to do shit. They got better with Brad Hand, a guy, Hearns, I believe.
Nicky Lopez.
They got Nicky from the Royals for Hearns, who they acquired last week for not much. So they flipped a guy they just got and got an infield depth, which is what they need. Last year when Albies went down and a few, Swanson was in and out. I mean, he played most of the year, but they really lacked versatility there. Arcia was not the guy he was this year. And they flipped a guy in a week who they got. That's Anthopoulos for you. And like I said, to get Daniel Bard, just what a great move. So they're on another level. But the rest of the NL is just up for grabs. And I agree. Baseball is going to be just on fire down to the wire. I didn't mean to rhyme because that sucked. But, we are talking about it. And the Cubs scored again. It's now 20-5.
Wow.
But yeah, and freaking buckle up, bro. I mean, it's gonna be fire from here on out.
Yes, it is. Awesome.
So for Tom Sloan, I'm Raj Mehta. We appreciate you guys watching our trade deadline special. This is Reckless Speculation. And whether or not you love baseball or not, we're going to talk about it. So fuck off. We will see you later.
What he said. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Reckless Speculation. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube searching Reckless Speculation. Catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We look forward to catching you right here next week with another exciting episode of Reckless Speculation.